we interrupt your regularly scheduled brainwashing in order to bring you news. Breaking news. A special segment of the almost daily ZenCast, focused on curious, quirky, and quixotic news items that you may have missed during the last 48-hour news cycle.
Or 5 years.
Hosted by me, the incorrigible Mr. Zeppo.
Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, and good night to you, dear friends and internet audience. I am your host, the incorrigible Mr. Zeppo, and it is in my current time zone, 7:31 a.m. on a Wednesday, June 1st. Welcome to the future, folks, because, we just left the past behind. On today's special and hopefully not too terribly long episode of Breaking News, a late broken headline from like 5 years ago, or however long ago 2015 is, or 20, whatever it is, however many years ago. Apparently, and mind you, I've always been curious about this, but I obviously have not been trying particularly hard to break the news myself or to figure it out. But apparently, and I say that, with the full disclaimer that I'm not a journalist. I don't pretend to be a journalist. This is a radio talk show style, opinion-based audio blog, entertainment podcast show for the purposes of fostering lively public discourse, civil lively public discourse. So please, dear friends, as you enter the imaginarium of your mind, and we create this shared imaginative space that happens almost automatically and unconsciously when we join together in this process called podcasting. And in this space, I invite you to please set aside all predefined assumptions, prescribed political ideologies, etc., so that we can just discuss the ideas and the words and the concepts directly, without too much mucking about with, redundant rhetoric. Okay, speaking of some rhetoric, for some years now, the Georgia Standing Stones, or Georgia Stones for short, I guess. I'm surprised they don't call them the GSS. I've personally never seen them referred to that as that. But for anyone who's not aware or not caught up in this particular trendy clump of conspiracy theory content, because there's more than one theory. There's a pin on the corkboard about that, dear friends. But generally speaking, the Georgia Standing Stones, as a matter of verifiable fact, are a granite or a stone monument mysteriously commissioned in Georgia by someone working under a pseudonym. Now, this apparently happened in the late 80s or early 90s. I don't remember right off the top of my head, but not that terribly long ago. And in recent years, the Standing Stones have become, pardon the pun, one of many motley crew of many central pillars. There's the pun, right? Because they're standing stones. They're not technically pillars. They're more like giant slabs. But they have become one of the darlings of the conspiracy theory community. And whilst many may think that there's one or two cohesive theories about the Standing Stones, there's a cornucopia. I've heard, in terms of attribution, in other words, according to various claims made in the cloud of different, in the spectrum of different conspiracy theory, statements, attributing the origin of these Standing Stones to a wide spectrum of supposedly confirmed and deeply researched and verified attributions, ranging from Satanists to whoever the Illuminati is supposed to be. And there is some disagreement because despite some denials in the conspiracy theory community, there are, to the best of my ability to observe, theories claiming that there are two different Illuminati groups, a good Illuminati group and a bad Illuminati group, as well as theories that only acknowledge or talk about the quote-unquote evil Illuminati group, and there doesn't seem to be any kind of consensus in the conspiracy theory community. That's another pin on the board. Consensus, or the lack thereof, on the conspiracy theory community. But we'll come back, round circle on that in a hot second. We're running down the list of things I've seen attributed as like the origin source of the Georgia Standing Stones. One of the two Illuminatis, whatever the mysterious New World Order institution is, aliens, all kinds of different alien ideas, robots from another planet or from the future, time travelers in general, baby-eating lizard people, etc. A cornucopia of divergent, one might even speculate if there's some neurodivergence going on, but they just don't correlate, right? Like, how could one monument be built by 15 different groups or individuals? And curiously, no one has acknowledged, in my experience, up until, recently, and I mean very recently, in my perceived, experience of being, a commentator in the world. And I don't pretend to be a researcher. I don't throw around that crazy claim. I usually, ask very sincere, if only somewhat dubious, doubtful questions about people who run around claiming that they've done their own research. Especially if they then point to a bunch of YouTube videos. I don't feel comfortable calling that research because, isn't Google supposed to be one of the biggest, largest, most evil, most nefarious corporations on the planet? Don't they own YouTube? Don't they own control the algorithms that feed you the stuff that you find? But let's put a pin on the corporate about that. Set that aside. My point is, I don't pretend to know anything more than I actually know. And if I'm speculating, I try to be very clear about that. Because speculation is perfectly fine and fair and natural. Blind faith, believing in speculative statements and then judging other people about it is an entire matter. Right? It's a completely different issue. And that's the problematic theme I find with conspiracy theory content. If I may express a humble flex, lots of people tell me, oh, have you read this one? Have you read this? I'm like, dude, I've been reading conspiracy theory content since Ronald Reagan was in office. When did you start reading conspiracy theory content? Oh, when you joined Facebook 3 years ago? I'm sorry. I've read enough conspiracy theory content to identify the reality that most of the Johnny-come-lately theories are just remixes and reboots and regarbles of the same basic premises. Noodled with the same basic neurolinguistic manipulative content and fear-mongering. Okay? So, the Georgia Standing Stones have long been used to fearmonger. Some evil nefarious group that may be supernatural in nature or robotic or who knows what is out to kill you. And then all kinds of things must be done about it, right? We must arm ourselves to the teeth and ignore a toxic incursion of gun addiction into what was supposed to be a safety culture, right? The NRA was supposed to be, now I'm not blaming this on the Georgia Standing Stones at all, I'm not even trying to connect the two, but the common theme in conspiracy theory, right, is that we take a thing and then we turn it inside out and we throw a bunch of garbage on top of it and we throw a bunch of neurolinguistic programming that says all the evil in the world is to be blamed on this individual, this group of people, this class of people, this race of people, this imaginary enemy that may not even exist. Okay? And that's just been done with the Georgia Stones. Ironically, when I very first heard of the Georgia Stones, I came across them from a neutral source just asking about them, like, where did this come from? What an interesting, weird set of precepts. What do they mean? And, just a very, not trying to be conspiratorial about it, just a source someone was writing an article about it. And I went and read a little bit more about it, and I was like, yes, indeed, very strange. Somebody with money and a position of enough power to say, do this, here is money, made this, and it's weird. Later, as conspiracy theory content about it started to propagate, I was very intrigued by the fact that they cherry-picked select statements out of it and ballooned those to the extremes that they ballooned them. Satan himself commissioned the Georgia Stones. Some green reptilian monster that must drink human blood or eat all our gold or whatever, enslave us to farm our kidneys, commissioned the Georgia Stones. But no, none of the here's a real, for a group of people that talk about questioning everything and using your critical reasoning, none of the conspiracy theory content I ever came across and reviewed vilifying whoever made the Georgia Stones ever really stopped and did a step-by-step, sincere, intellectually honest, and unbiased assessment of the 10 things written on the stones. Before we go any further, I thought it would be good to do that really quick. And I'm not saying that I'm endorsing anything here, okay? I'm just reporting what I understand to be confirmable. I've never been to the Georgia Stones. I've looked at photographs from various people, all of which seem to correlate and line up and not be different from one another. And the text here is in line with that, okay? According to Wikipedia, and I know people will come up with their reasons why Wikipedia is not... I just explained why I don't think that blind faith and conspiracy theory content in YouTube should be blindly trusted. Okay, I get it. But like I said, to the extent of my ability to confirm it with multiple sources beyond actually going there, somebody fund my venture, media industry idea, and we'll go. But here we go. To the best of my limited ability to verify, these are the actual 10 statements on the Georgia Standing Stones. 1, and this is the one most instantly jumped upon and used to nefariously jump to all kinds of, admittedly, Akram's razor, like beyond that boundary of Akram's razor, like beyond the pale of like, that's just a bit too cuckoo nut jobs for me to verify. Now, there was something I was about to type in and look up, but what was it? Oh, yeah. Current population of the Earth. Real quick. Just to, for context. According to the internet, the current population of the Earth is currently estimated to be about 7.753 billion people. Okay. I just wanted to call that out. Now, I hope I've got my numerical comma placement correct. The very first guideline, because they are called guide stones, according to some of them, right? And they are, for full understanding, they're on the stones in multiple languages. Apparently the list is English, Spanish, Swahili, Hindi, Hebrew, Arabic, traditional Chinese, and Russian. And English. Did I say A? So, maintain humanity, number 1, maintain humanity under 500 million, I believe. That's 100. No, that's 1,000. That's 100,000. So 500,000? No, that's 500 million. I always get confused. It's my dyslexia. So the first comma is 1,000. That first comma would be 1 million. So yes, 500 million. Okay. So that's quite a bit less than the 7 billion. It's easy to to jump to the conclusion, oh, someone wants to murder, 7 billion people to get the population of the Earth down to 500 million people. But it doesn't say murder everyone to achieve this number. It just says maintain. And I'm a nitpicker for language and words because we abuse them. So we should try not to abuse them in order to sustain the clearest possible understanding of things and have truly productive discussions, right? Public discourse, not mindless ideological argument. So, okay, let's just finish reading the list real quick. Number 2, guide reproduction wisely. That's, you can give a generous interpretation of that, but that is a suspicious statement. Improving fitness and diversity. Okay. That does stank a little of the kind of things that the Nazis were talking about, but not quite as explicitly, like, the Aryan race must be the Adonis of humanity. Not quite there, but it's pointing in that direction. But let's not jump to conclusions. Number 3, unite humanity with a living new language. Okay, this is a controversial subject. One that I find interesting, independent of conspiracy theory, attributions of evil villainy behind it. The idea of a language that would transcend the linguistic cultural barriers inherent in a multi-language society has its benefits. It also has its supposed attributions and nefarious plans of global unionization and the globalists are bad kind of language. Okay. But it doesn't say you might unite. It does not. That statement does not say turn the world into one big country, right? It just says develop a language so that all of humanity can communicate. Okay. Rule number 4, or statement number 4. Rule passion - faith - tradition - and all things with tempered reason. I don't know about you, but that doesn't strike to me as particularly nefarious or evil sounding. It actually sounds like something everyone should maybe consider, because we tend to not rule passion, faith, tradition, culture, politics, debate, ideology, and all things social with tempered reason, don't we? We tend to do the opposite and get a little out of control and heated and argumentative and confrontational and irrational about things. But nefarious, that does not sound to me. Okay, number 5. Protect people and nations with fair laws and just courts. That, to me, sounds kind of the opposite of what everything the conspiracy theory content claims the globalists are out to achieve. What are you going to say about that? Besides, okay, great, you're going to find rationales to flip that inside out, probably, if you're going to stick to the conspiracy theory content. But I'm just pointing out, it does really seem to be an explicit statement that goes contrary to globalist, the supposed globalist agenda. Now, there are real globalists in the world, but that's like a legitimate, quote-unquote, legitimate economic expression of some sort of internet, consumerist, capitalist economy. But that's a whole nother discussion. Let's put a pin on the board about that. I sure do like to have interesting discussions with people about capitalism, especially those who turn a blind eye to all the obvious, direct, undeniable, verifiable, factual damage and toxic misery that it causes the vast plurality of people in the world. But, capitalists only care about what the rich white capitalists say. Everything else is nonsense. But I digress. Put a pin on the board for that. We'll come back and talk about that some other time. Number 6. And again, I'm not trying to find ways to defend or rationalize these stones. I'm just responding to the words as they seem to appear on the actual text of the stones, vis-a-vis the fear-mongering I've heard about them from conspiracy theory content regurgitators. Number 6 was let all nations. Oh no. Number 5 was protect people and nations with fair laws and just courts. That doesn't sound horrible to me. Number 6. Let all nations rule internally, resolving external disputes in a world court. Again, I can see how you could try to suggest that that's some nefarious globalist agenda, but it's also clearly defending the nation sovereignty of like, rule yourselves internally, and external disputes, we need some sort of system to resolve. And maybe it shouldn't be a militarized industrial complex that profiteers on global conflict. It's not implicitly stated in that statement, but that seems to me what it's responding to. I'm probably giving it a benefit of the doubt there, quite a bit of an attribution. But in and of itself, it respects national sovereignties and proposes a rational system for solving disputes. Again, doesn't sound like an evil globalist lizard blood drinking agenda to me. Okay? Number 7. And this one's brilliant because it's never mentioned by conspiracy theorists ever that I've ever recognized or noticed, right? Number 7, avoid petty laws and useless officials. I don't even know what to say about that, except that surely doesn't sound like a bad idea to me. I think America maybe needs to do a little bit of that. Review its petty laws and anachronistically outdated laws and laws that don't make any freaking sense, right? We're supposed to be a nation of laws, so our laws should be rational and sane and not irrational, outdated, or motivated by corporate corruption influencing our politics. But I digress. That's a subject that already has a pin on the board, has been discussed on multiple episodes, and I'm sure will be discussed again. So, moving on. Number 8, balance personal rights with social duties. Oh my God, the horror! I'm not even going to say anything else beyond that. Besides, isn't that what freedom is supposed to be in a rational, sane society that respects both the individual and the community? Because neither are mutually exclusive. If you're an individual, no matter how much you want to hang out in your house by yourself, you're still a member of the community because everything impacts everyone else, even the shit we do, in our own homes. Obviously, privacy is privacy. Don't even begin to try to make a wedge rationalization that I'm trying to argue against privacy. Nonsense. But even the things we do in our own private life, right, that we don't need to discuss with others, has externalized tertiary impacts on people, right? The things you flush down your toilet without even discussing what they are impact the fucking water system, friends. But I digress. Balance personal rights and social duties does not sound like something that evil, gold harvesting robots that need your brain for some reason would care to even waste their time enforcing, right? Like, what? Okay, number 9. Again, something the conspiracy theorists content that freak out and hyper vilify and project and essentially fabricate completely unrelated fantasy stories about how you should be terrified, you should be armed to the teeth, and you should be ready to shoot someone about this. Don't ever talk about. Number 9, prize truth, beauty, love. Seek harmony with the infinite. Oh my God. Whoever wrote that must be eliminated, is what the eliminationist rhetoric ends up becoming over on the conspiracy theory side of things, right? Doesn't make any sense to me. Who wouldn't want to prize truth, beauty, love, and harmony with whatever divinity is, which is what I consider the use of the word infinite to imply here. I could be wrong, but, any work of art is as much created by the viewer as it is by the artist. And I don't know what this person intended, but it technically, as a monument, qualifies as public art, yo. And even if it's not art, even if it's just a monument of expressing some person or a small group of people's ideals, the audience still brings their projections to it, right? Are your projections nothing but whole cloth made up conspiracy theory nonsense? Or are you using your intellectual prowess to really contemplate the words and their meaning and their possible implications to come to your own, well thought out conclusions about it? That's the question I always ask conspiracy theorist enthusiasts, for which they get really hot in the face and all worked up and bothered and usually end up blocking me. You claim to question everything, use critical reasoning skills, and not just blindly regurgitate content, but when someone questions your content that you're clearly blindly regurgitating, you get all huffy puffy and slam the door on their face. That doesn't, bode well for your arguments, dear friends. If that's the way you're reacting to things, to anyone questioning your assertions, especially if the facts on the ground don't seem to back them up. Again, not seeing any evidence here for a nefarious plot, just on the words of the text alone. Could I be wrong? Sure. Of course. So could the conspiracy theories, though. Dun, dun, dun. In fact, probabilistically speaking, they are more likely to be incorrect because there's a cornucopia of contradicting theories, and no one picks the one that's the truest. They just all go, yeah, and nod along and blah, blah, blah. There's no discerning in the conspiracy theory community that I'm aware of. There's a few people out there that acknowledge that there's garbage conspiracy theories, but are they spending as much time trying to reform their own community of fellow conspiracy theorists and point out to them, hey, there's garbage here? No, they're still just jumping on the bandwagon of reposting garbage memes about judging the people who don't blindly agree with all conspiracy theory content, aren't they? Most of them. They only tend to acknowledge the reality that there's garbage conspiracy theory content when someone asks them deep probing questions about the content that they're peddling. And then they're like, okay, you're right, maybe this is a little garbage, and there is garbage out there. Everyone's got to judge for themselves. Everyone's got to discern nonsense, malarkey, and manipulation from verifiable facts. Okay? Now, the statements on these stones aren't verifiable facts, are they? So to then use them as evidence of an unverifiable claim, that sounds like if we got a scale, and then I'm going to finish this analogy, then I'll read the final thing, and then we'll move on to the breaking news, which isn't even so breaking. I just found out about it recently because I don't pretend to be a journalist, right? But apparently this broke in 2017 or 2016 or 2015 or something like that. But if we had a scale, and the scale magically determines which content is benign and which content is nefarious because of what is in it, and you had the Georgia Stones on one side, right, and the conspiracy theory content about the Georgia Stones on the other, I'm not a betting man. But I'm willing to go out on a very solid limb here and suggest to you, dear friends, that honest, intellectually sincere critical reasoning might lead you to conclude that the safe bet is on the conspiracy theory content being weighed by this magical scale as the malarkey content. The content that's got manipulative, psychologically, neurolinguistically programming statements and programming content, the language of neurolinguistic manipulation riddled throughout it, not these 10 statements. Okay, time for the final statement. Number 10, be not a cancer on the earth. Leave room for nature. Leave room for nature. Okay, so 2 out of the 10, 3, if you're being generous, out of the 10 sound mildly problematic without further context and without understanding the socioeconomic, political, ideological, dogmatic belief constructs of the individual or individuals who wrote them. Let's be really honest, right? Now, we're going to take a quick musical break and tease a little bit of a song for you from DJ Zed, who's looking at me very impatiently like, this is supposed to be a short episode. We're already at 30 minutes. So here's a bit of music, and we'll get to the final redonkulousness that's recently come to my attention that has everything to do with my long-standing theory about conspiracy theory. That conspiracy theory advocates and junkies tend to get a little ruffled about. And that's, put plainly, that it's the conspiracy theory content that's manipulating people as much, if not egregiously more, than most of the things decried by conspiracy theory content as nefarious. And while, yes, some conspiracy theory content contains revelations worthy of investigation, troubling issues that have been exposed in the past, and often uses plain, straight-up realities that aren't even secret, that are, in fact, problematic issues, they are ultimately not the glorious, saving truth that they pretend to be, because it's been around for 60 years and solved absolutely jack diddly squat. But I digress. Time for a little bit of Tribal Root Dance, a DJ Zed remix live digital asset live-to-tape performance of the deep electronica genre from the forthcoming fictional album, The Archaeology of Robot Dance. You can enjoy more of DJ Zed's robot dance electronic music from the discotheque synthetica genre over at soundcloud.com/MrZeppo. Go check out the tracks and vote for your favorite ones. Help us sort out which tracks are good and which tracks are not good according to human interests and tastes. Because, this is robot dance music from a very deep, very ancient genre, discotheque synthetica, from a dimension in the Zeppoverse where robot life evolved before human life and therefore robots invented primitive tribal dance and sophisticated metropolitan postmodern dance long before humans even existed. And that's the fun of the Zeppoverse, friends. That's just one dimension of the many dimensions of the Zeppoverse you can explore. You want to join us in our journey of content creation? Head on over to Solo.to/MrZeppo and click on all the links. Okay, friends. So the Georgia Stones, I double checked. They were erected in 1980. All right. And they explain themselves as an astronomical clock. It is explained as an astronomical clock with particular features and settings, somewhat similar to Stonehenge, right? And as has been known since the 80s, it is attributed to, the writing is attributed to the pseudonym Robert C. Christian. Now, here's the big boom. Apparently, and like I said, I'm not pretending that, I'm not pretending anything. This is a wow moment for me. I came across, let me back up and tell you something. Let me back up and disclaimer something. The following reference is not meant to violate any creative rights on anyone's behalf. It's just a real life reality of how I came across this information. And then I did indeed go to what limited extent I had, or methods I have at my disposal to make sure that this information was at least repeated in multiple sites to indicate that it's, that this particular source isn't making it up out of whole cloth. So I am, full disclosure, a genuine, enthusiastic fan of John Oliver and last week's News Tonight, or whatever the show is called. I'm terrible at names and titles. I'm glad I got his name right. What can I say? John Oliver is a quick-witted, fast-talking, charming English guy that calls it like he sees it, loves America, and will not hesitate to criticize the shit out of it. Okay? And his show, just for context, for everyone's understanding, is not a show that I blindly believe in and just take whatever he says as if it were gospel truth. I don't do that to anybody. But the style, format, and features of his show, what he does, what they all do together, because he's got a staff and budget and and has resources at their disposal. What they do is what I would love to be doing, and that I'm trying to sort of simulate or emulate and bootstrap myself into doing vis-a-vis this humble, totally homemade podcast. In all honesty, folks, and I've been accused of all kinds of things that are not true. I'm just a dude sitting at home with just enough scrap to spend to produce this humble, rough around the edges podcast that is indeed entirely my own effort. No one is telling me what to say. No one is handing me a script. No one's paying me to say this. The only money I get from this show is the money generated by the monetization of the show itself, and it's generated by you, dear audience. So thank you for your support just by listening. Much appreciated. The more you listen, the more I am capable to reach someday that target vision of becoming a show a bit more like Last Week Tonight, or what's the other one? Another comedian that does a news commentary talk show that I really like. See, this is how bad at names I am. Well, I'm just going to leave it blank and I'll fill it in later. I don't remember his name, but there's plenty, David Letterman to the most recent guys on the set. I love the idea of comedy and news. Right? So, but again, I'm not pretending to be a journalist. I'm not pretending to have the staff, resources, budget to go out and directly, individually, personally confirm things. But I do the best I can to at least verify that other sources indicate that this is real, and that it is. I try to look for things that debunk this, for things that debunk anything that I'm trying to look into. Right. One of the things I find interesting is for a lot of the people who claim to do their own research, never add the word debunked to their searches. Like UFO believers rarely, when I ask them, ever own up to searching for UFO conspiracy theory debunked, UFO sightings debunked. Now, mind you, I get it. The government's releasing all kinds of interesting new content that makes it harder and harder to blindly accept the absolutist debunking of alien deniers. I'm not into denying things and pretending that I know absolutely for certain for things, right? If you blind faith deny something, you're doing the same thing as someone who blind faith claims something is true, in my humble opinion. Having said all that, to the best of my ability to check for myself, John Oliver is correct in pointing out that a documentary by the name of Dark Clouds Over Elberton, the true story of the Georgia Guidestones, came out in 2015 and is currently available on Amazon Prime as well as various other platforms. And that is not intended to be an Amazon Prime promo commercial. I'm not endorsing anything. I'm just reporting the reality. Apparently, whoever made the documentary spent 5 years investigating the situation to solve the mystery. While I'm not going to bullshit you and pretend that I've already watched the video, I have yet to find it somewhere free or with commercial support, because right now I'm not going to be blowing money on Amazon videos anytime soon. I'm a bit strapped. Why do you think I do this podcast as often as I can? And but what I have found is in multiple locations, other articles, for example, this one available at theclio.com, which I've never heard of before, that indicate that yes, indeed, R.C. Christian, the pseudonym, has been confirmed to be Dr. Herbert Heine, and that makes me giggle, Heine, H-I-N-I-E, and I don't mean to ridicule the man. I do believe he's passed away. But that's a funny name. Herbert Heine Kirsten, okay? A doctor from Iowa who is an American, a white man with money, apparently, and I'm not entirely sure, and I may be overstepping my bounds here, a Christian and a Republican. Now, that's speculative. I haven't been able to track those two bits down, but it sure sounds like he is not entirely. I'm not entirely without reason here. And one of the bits that is oh so interesting is that Dr. Herbert Heine Kirsten, on multiple occasions, in a way that can be verified with using publicly available sources, publicly endorsed and supported David Duke, former Grand Master of the KKK. So, late to the party, but excited to find out. This is truly, I was writing a post. I was going to write this up as a post first, and then I realized, nope, gotta go with podcast because I've got more words to say here. But to read to you the post I was going to post earlier. Quote, in a dizzying twist of ironic fate, it turns out that, in fact, the mysterious Georgia standing stones or guide stones, long rumored and fear-mongered to have been commissioned by either the Illuminati or the New World Order, alien robots, or a race of lizard people that eat human brains, by the conspiracy theory, rumor-mongered and fear-mongered by the conspiracy theory community, which has been long convinced that the stones were proof of foreign interference in Americans' prosperity and various other conspiratorial conclusions, right? It was recently documented, and by recently I mean 2015, that the individual who commissioned the infamous Georgia Guidestones under the pseudonym Robert C. Christian was actually white Christian and potentially extreme wing Republican Dr. Herbert Heine Christensen, who previously, on multiple occasions, publicly praised David Duke. Now, there's a couple of things I find fascinating here. So, the Guidestones have been around since 1980. The conspiracy theory content about it has been around since at least 2019, maybe longer. Clearly longer, because in 2015, this guy went out to do this thing, right? So forgive me, I completely misspoke. It's been around since 2000 at least, if not longer. I don't remember it as far back as like 98, 99. So it's early 2000s, right? And this documentary that, by all apparent evidence available, has conclusively confirmed the identity of the long speculated individual that commissioned the Standing Stone. This information has not made its way through the conspiracy theory community, and or is being actively ignored by the conspiracy theory community. So I humbly encourage you, dear friends, should you happen to have a bunch of friends that are, known conspiracy theory enthusiasts, humbly encourage them to come listen to this podcast episode, because I'm fairly certain that lots of conspiracy theory enthusiasts out there foaming at the mouth in outrage that we're going to be butchered to death by the evil brain-eating alien robot laser beam monkey brains monsters, whatever it is, need to hear this, and that their brains literally need to go through that slightly painful process of adjusting to the realization of their own cognitive dissonances, aka having their minds blown a little bit, and having to contend with the reality that one of their favorite conspiracy MacGuffins was actually created by one of their own kind. It's not robots from another planet. It's not baby-eating lizards. It's not Europeans that want to take over the world. It's not evil satanic Satan worshippers. It's a white doctor that has confused a little bit of spiritual, respect for Earth and some, mildly ethno-nationalist tendencies to encourage people like David Duke to keep, espousing the nonsense they're espousing. Womp, womp, womp is all I gotta say to that. And with that, dear friends, I will bring this episode to an abrupt close. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please do share this episode if you appreciate this information, and go check it out for yourself. Go visit the Standing Stones if you can afford it. If you can afford visiting the Standing Stones, please visit ko-fi/MrZeppo, ko-fi.com. There's a little hyphen dash in the middle there. ko-fi/MrZeppo, and drop a donation. And then go to the Georgia Stones. And then go visit, the local library of Dr. Herbert Heine Christian. And see, if you can find out stuff about him. I don't know. I'm just rambling now. As always, friends, remember to be good humans. Remember to actually question everything. Remember to ask yourselves the kinds of questions you ask of other content when you find it dubious of the content you're regurgitating. Okay? We all love to see something that we like go trending and participate in that. That isn't inherently evil. But we also can quickly fall into the ego trap of regurgitating content that's stroking our ego and making us feel good because somewhere in there we're judging and vilifying others. That's the biggest critique I have about the conspiracy theory content. And that's not limited to Georgia Guidestone content, right? The guy that commissioned the Guidestones may have been a racist. He might not have been. He might just been one of those people that don't realize their ideas are are sitting on the slippery slope of the ego trap of racism or ethno-nationalism. But he seems to also be someone who respected nature and wanted people not to trash it and wanted nations not to endlessly destroy one another in a meaningless tug of war that doesn't actually resolve problems. Hey, what is it, that thing that I'm always saying in my podcast about how no human individual nor any human institution is ever a monolith of anything? Check it out. It turns out that this guy who commissioned the Georgia Guidestones isn't the NWO, isn't the Illuminati, isn't a robot from outer space, isn't a lizard person from another dimension. He's just a hot mess of a human being with some screwed up ideas mixed in with some not so screwed up ideas, who had enough money and influence and power to build himself a monument. As always, friends, I humbly thank you for tuning in, and I encourage you to think through my words with your own critical reasoning skills and ask the questions you want to ask me. Come on down to the Facebook page for the Almost Daily ZenCast or to the Sprecher.com page. Those are the two places I am most likely to find your comments, especially if you put them underneath the specific episode you want to make the comment about. Another way to reach me directly that I'll notice is if you email the show specific email, the incorrigible Mr. Zeppo, all one word, no period, no gaps, no hyphens, at gmail.com. All of those links and social media widgets can be found over at Solo.to /MrZeppo. And now what was supposed to be a 30-minute episode is basically turned into an hour-long episode because I'm going to play you a little bit more music before we head out. As always, friends, thank you so much for being here. And here is the next track to tease your ears and seduce you into coming over to SoundCloud.com /MrZeppo to support our endeavors in creating digital, electronic, robot dance music known as Discotheque Synthetica. This following track is entitled Perfect Take, the Unknown Stuff of Life Robotic from, we didn't include the designated app name. I think it was Remix Live, since most of these are Remix Live. Here you go, folks. Enjoy the music, and I'll see you on the flip side. Remember, folks, if there is a vile, evil group of nefarious individuals that control the narrative, they very likely control the counter-narrative and the backlash narrative and the conspiracy theory content narrative, and right? Like, if they're that all-powerful and they control everyone in the media, then they must control everyone in the conspiracy theory content too. Or maybe, just maybe, nothing that human beings do is a monolith of pure evil. No human individual is a monolith of pure evil. And the human species is just a hot mess full of beauty and corruption, full of love and hate, full of flaws and strengths. And instead of nefariously trying to pin the blame of everything onto one evil group of people, we should be unifying, uniting. Not to fight, not to blame, not to murder or eliminate the bad people. Eliminationist rhetoric is problematic at best, if not downright immoral and psychotic. We need to stop fanning the flames and turning a blind eye to eliminationist rhetoric wherever we see it. Why? Because that's what bad guys do, eliminationist rhetoric. I mean, this has got to be said loud and often, folks, because there's way too many people in American society today blindly regurgitating eliminationist rhetoric. I cannot pronounce that word today. Eliminationalist rhetoric. Rhetoric that piece by piece, step by step, vilification by vilification, dehumanization by dehumanization, leads the reader and the audience of that content down the slippery slope ego trap of believing that X group of people, or X individuals, or X country, or X race, or X religion must be eliminated because they are an evil existential threat, a totality of bad. Have you met the human species? Of course there's corruption. Of course there's flaws. Of course there's bad apples. Of course there's idiots. Of course there's greed and corruption. But there's also beauty and truth and tenderness and kindness and compassion. Even the worst totalitarian dictators had their soft side. And that's not saying something inconsequential. Everybody is a human being. If we start carving each other up based on the dehumanization rhetoric, the eliminationalist rhetoric that is fanning the flames of violence today, we're never going to solve any problems, folks. We're just going to take a run at wiping ourselves off the planet. And that's what I got to say about that, folks. Thank you for tuning in. This has been a special episode of the Almost Daily ZenCast. Breaking news, with shocking mystery solved in 2015, and just resharing the realization that this is out there, and the conspiracy theory community, which is still enthusiastically foaming at the mouth about how evil the Georgia Guidestones are, because it was made by someone other than one of their own right-wing, conspiratorially minded nut jobs, right? Because no matter what, once you look at the full extent of things, right, you got to agree, although there's some ingredients here which have a nobility to them, we got to call out the reality that the guy who wrote it and commissioned the creation of this monument was a KKK sympathizer. What are you going to do? Except call out the conspiracy theory content and point everyone in the direction of the facts and go, now what are we going to do about it? Let's have a real, reasonable, civil, compassion-based, intelligent, and intellectually honest discussion about it. And stop engaging in the argumentation over obviously neurolinguistically manipulative, borderline psychotic content. I said that's all I was going to say about it, and I went on to talk about more. Thank you for listening. This is the incorrigible MrZeppo signing off. If I can get the button to work. Here we go.
And that is the latest breaking news. We now return you to your regularly scheduled brainwashing. Thank you for listening.
May peace, love, and grooviness blossom in your heart. And may humanity remember how to be good humans. Peace out.